Oh, oh, I don't know where I am. Who are you? What's your name?
Mary.
Are you? I don't know what's going on with this camera. Are you? Are you a Skrull?
Yep. Yep.
What?
Yep.
A Skrull?
Yeah, roll credits into the series.
Listen, I'm Agent Prescod. I don't believe that you're a Skrull. I think that you're, quote unquote, messing with me. And believe me, I've got a real good eye for this sort of thing. I've spent a long time researching and studying and looking at pictures of what Skrulls look like, so I know what Skrulls are. And I think that you intercepted this telecommunication to broadcast because you're not a Skrull, because only a Skrull, only a human, only someone who's not a Skrull could have gotten into here to talk to me right now.
Yeah, Skrulls aren't very good with the internet. I've heard. That makes sense.
Historically, famously, they're still the 90s for them. They don't know. They don't know. That's why they need to manipulate others into launching nuclear bombs at the world. I'm Agent Prescod. What's your name?
Mary.
Mary. Did you say that already?
Yes.
Sorry. I'm flustered. It's been a day. I got shot earlier, but it was fake. I faked my death.
Okay. Spoilers.
Faked my death. Ross doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. He doesn't know. He doesn't know what's going on. You know what's going on?
Is it a trick with no?
Okay. Let me fill you in.
Okay.
There's a secret invasion going on. A secret invasion. It's been going on for 30 years. 30 years, the Skrulls. There's a race of space aliens, Martian men called the Skrulls, and they infiltrated Earth, and they can look like anyone. It could be hopefully not you, but it could be my mom, it could be your mom, it could be the president's mom, it could be anyone's mom.
Anyone's mom. That's the moral of the story.
Anyone's mother could be a Skrull. Do you understand?
Yes.
It's serious. Anything could be happening.
Yeah.
Okay. So the Skrulls, they're infiltrating, right? They're infiltrating. I've done the math. I've done the math. All right. The Skrulls, they're infiltrating, and they're becoming presidents and senators and CIA agents, and they're gonna launch nukes and start World War III. Okay.
Okay.
This makes sense. You're following.
Yeah, I watched the episode. Yeah.
Episode. Okay. I must be communicating with someone from another plane.
The episode if we can.
Hold on. I'm getting there. I understand. Okay, I'm filling you in. Oh, sorry. I'm constantly out of breath. I've been stressed for 30 years. Okay, I'm an agent. I work for, I don't know. You don't know. No one knows, but I'm an agent. And I've been working on this for a while. I faked my own death because they were onto me. They were onto me. That Ross, he was a Skrull, and he knew. So I let him think that he killed me. I always keep ketchup in my pocket. Okay, comes in handy. You never know. It's gonna come in handy. Yeah. And now I'm hiding out here in a secondary location with a beard now to show that time has passed, and I'm communicating with you so that someone knows my story, because this invasion is secret, and we're looking to unlock these secrets, and I'm recording what's going on a weekly basis in the world so that we can break it down. You and I figure out what's going on, talk about theories, talk about opinions on things, right on the math, and then we're gonna figure it out. Okay, but you saw my first communication, so you see this week's worth of footage.
Oh, the episode?
Yeah, I called it Secret Invasion because
Okay,
it's an invasion, but it's a secret.
Okay, that's your, okay. Yep,
Uh,
seen it.
this is making sense.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Now, if you want to give me maybe some brief thoughts on your brief thoughts and ideas, because unlike Ross, I think you do know what the hell you're talking about. And I want you to talk about it. Okay?
Okay. Just
Thank
start
you.
from, yeah. No, okay, and we've kind of come into this before where we've seen like the first two and then we have to talk about the first. So it's hard to differentiate. But in general, I like it. It is very slow. But I like how it's kind of getting back to a bit more, I don't know, like chill, more grounded level than a lot of the stuff recently we've been doing with MCU. I will say with Secret Invasion, it just doesn't track from the comics for a lot of reasons, including all of the characters for the most part, and so I think it's difficult to be like really into like, oh, who's a Skrull, when there's like 2 to 3 characters max where you'd actually be like, oh god, whoa, and I feel like Ross was very quickly in this first one, kind of outed. And at the end of this episode, they killed Maria Hill. So like some of the characters we already know are already like out. So I think it has potential, but I'm not sure if they're gonna like really do anything overly interesting with it or not. I really don't know. But I think it does have potential. I really do. But it is slow and it is very different than what people who read the comics would probably expect from a Secret Invasion series.
Right. I've read these books you're talking about. They're I think the Skrulls are basing their plan on them, and so I read them for research purposes. Okay, so I can get into the minds of the Skrulls. And you're right. In those books, there's all the Avengers are there. There's all sorts of hullabaloo. There's all sorts of things going on, and that stuff's not happening here. No, because this is the real world that I'm from and live in, and I think that it's interesting how it reflects that. I think that I think that this is a really thrilling first week in which I got to die, and then I got to see all these other things going on. But what I like is I kind of like that it's lower, that there's a lower degree to it than the comics. I think that the comics are this big event. They're this big Marvel universe changing event, and I think that the MCU or the time that I'm living in is just not there currently. They have other things going on that they really want to do, and I get that. So I feel like they want to tell this type of story, and I think that watching this first episode, what a lot of people will pick up on is this is really about Nick Fury. And it's interesting to me because I think clearly they wanted to make like Nick Fury the TV show, and way back when there were first signs of a secret invasion, and trades were talking about these things. They had announced it as like a Nick Fury show. That guy likes attention, which is weird for his job. That he's still undeterred. I don't know what his job is now or who he works for.
Yeah, that's so weird. They never made that clear of like,
it's unspecified.
Yeah, but that's about it. Because I was watching that too. I'm like, did I miss it? Or they like did a little brief explanation of what he's doing, other than being in space. Yeah.
I don't know. He's just in space, and it's a thing. But yeah, I think that this is very much like Nick Fury, the TV show, and I think that the Skrulls and people were like, how do we enrich like a Nick Fury show? What story do we tell that could be like Fury is the center of it? And they realized there was an opportunity to follow up on a lost plot thread with the Skrulls from Captain Marvel, and to kind of dig into that and make that like part of Nick Fury's identity at this phase, and adapt Secret Invasion in a way that it's like the themes of Secret Invasion, like who do you trust? You don't know what's going on, but really it's Nick Fury, the show.
Yeah, I agree.
Great.
That is
I'm
pretty
glad.
clear.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think that I, watching this footage, have been able to sort of readjust my brain to be like, it's not, I'm no longer expecting like big cameos or these big reveals. I think that I've adjusted it to be, I'm focusing on Nick Fury and how these events are affecting him. And to that degree, I have really enjoyed the show as like viewing it as Nick Fury the series. Granted, I know it's titled Secret Invasion, so maybe there should be some of that. But me and there is like there is some of that. Clearly, I'm here talking to you about Skrulls. I don't know about Skrulls.
It's like in 2012 saying, well, it's called the Avengers. Maybe they should be in it. But,
Well, that point doesn't stand because the Skrulls are in it and they are invading secretly, but it's not the same story. They borrowed the title for, I think, probably marketing purposes, but really they just want Nick Fury the show, and they want to do Secret Invasion sort of with that. But you bring up Ross, right? My guy, my dude. I thought I could trust him. I brought him in. I was talking to him. And then he tried to kill me because he's a Skrull. Yes, you.
question. You said earlier you were really good at knowing who the Skrulls were, and then you went and
Yes,
died.
well, that was before I came up with this equation.
Oh, okay, there's an equation.
Now I know.
Okay.
I've spent so much time. I'm really good at this. But I was duped at least one time. And that was very similar, if you've read those books, to the kickoff, which is with a character called Elektra in the comics, where Elektra dies, turns into a Skrull, and everyone's like, oh no, Skrulls. And that's what happens here. But it's Ross instead of Elektra. Any thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, I get your point with like the first, because she was like kind of the first Skrull that like obviously started this, and for a while it was just literally just one Skrull body that was kind of going. Like Tony Stark had the body at some point in the Illuminati. He was like, whoa, what the fuck? And then it kind of like spiraled from there. So I don't feel like Ross is quite that way, because like again, nobody really is involved except for like 3 people. So it didn't spark like a greater mistrust among a bigger group of people like in the comics. And I think, we have at least personally talked about this before, but I think something I really am disappointed with the MCU is how little they did with Civil War, like after the movie. Like it didn't matter. In the comics, like, that was already happening and had happened before Secret Invasion, so they already like didn't fully trust each other and then different factions. So it like really added to that. And we don't have, we had the blip and like everyone's like, you know, whoa, world's crazy, but a lot of that sort of, I don't know, interpersonal like foundation of it just isn't there like it was in the comics, which is, that's the comics. They've had decades to do whatever they want. I get that. So it does feel smaller. And I feel like that's why it feels slower, because fewer people are concerned and like fewer people are learning about it. And it's like, if the world does go into a nuclear holocaust, one person knew about it ahead of time. That's kind of how I feel right now with it.
Right. And I think that's actually a really good point, where like in the comics, like you said, they have this build up. I didn't even think about Civil War in the comics. Like there was already, it does add that layer of like, oh, well, did a Skrull start Civil War on purpose? Did like, who is who's doing what? And here they're not doing that. But I think that for me personally, I didn't feel like this first episode was that slow. It didn't go by that slow for me. I felt like the beginning was cool. I liked, you know, they thought I was dead, but I was watching from the shadows. When Ross was being chased by, as we find out, Talos, and they're going up the building and like the lights are going up. I thought that was all fun and all cool. And I like that because it's not like the Avengers are questioning each other and trying to figure out what's going on. They've almost switched the Skrulls from that to like the Illuminati, not the comic version, but like the hypothetical Illuminati that people theorize about in the real world. It's like that does exist, but the Illuminati is Skrulls, which I think is cool, where it's like, oh, maybe not all these superheroes are Skrulls, but like politicians and world leaders are Skrulls. And that adds like a different kind of, like, I know that was in the comics too, but it's like more of the focus in the show. And I think that adds a really interesting new layer to focus on for me personally. I thought that was pretty cool. And it felt, they have sort of hyped this up as like the spiritual sequel to Winter Soldier, like all these years later. And I feel like I can see that, and I can pick up on some of that, which I think I've enjoyed that.
Yeah, I think the tone is very similar, especially if you compare other Marvel projects, like it's probably the closest you're gonna find. Including like Civil War. I feel like that was still very different feeling than Winter Soldier compared to this. So I agree with that. And I do agree a lot with your comment, like the focus is much more on what are they doing in these kind of world power roles versus like which Avengers a Skrull, kind of thing. And I think that is definitely makes it more of like a, I don't know, political thriller type thing versus like a superhero action thing. And I do think that's interesting. And I think I'm excited to see how much Rhodey we get and how much Don Cheadle, because he is Rhodey, we get, because he's great. And he got that Emmy nomination for his like 90-second cameo with the Falcon and Winter Soldier. Who knows what he can do here?
I forgot that happened.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
In this episode, we got like 10 seconds of him, but I'm excited for him. He's great. That's like the one character I'm like just pumped is in this, to be honest. Nick Fury's interesting too. I agree, like this is his show and he deserves a show. Samuel L. Jackson deserves like the spotlight, but they've made him like old, slow, kind of limpy Nick Fury, and I'm like, is
old
this
man Fury?
Yeah, and it's like, okay, is this kind of like something that's like not necessarily an act, but like, is it gonna like go away, or is it? Because I don't know. It's a little. If I had a Nick Fury show after all this time, I would want him to not be like the feeble old man that he's kind of made out to be a little bit. Even just this episode with with Olivia Colman's character and that interaction, and it's just like, again, it's Nick Fury, so who knows what he's cooking up or not. But it's kind of like where are we going? Where are we going with this?
Yeah, I agree. It's not the Fury it's Fury unlike we have seen him before, and like. Again, that's another thing that they've been saying in advertisements that has turned out to be true. I also, again, I think this is somewhere that I actually really like that in the sense that keeping in mind that it's the first episode, like I think there's a lot of cool potential stories that they've set up that if like across 6 episodes they can handle well, could be very interesting character dives into like who is Nick Fury, this guy who has always just been on the side, sort of like the impenetrably cool, always 3 steps ahead of everybody. I feel like the thought process is if you have him just like that for the whole show, then they were afraid that they'd have nowhere to go with him as a character. So they were like, let's introduce him as not what you've seen. Let's introduce him as someone who is in the worst spot he's been in his life, who doesn't know what direction he's in. He's so far removed. He's like, and honestly, as I believe you might call him Samuel L. Jackson, does a really, in your wherever you're recording this from, he does. He seems to be enjoying it a lot, in my opinion. Like, he's delivering lines like he's in a mid-'80s action film, and they've just dragged him out of retirement from a cabin in the mountains, and he's like, I'm too old for this shit. Like, he fully has that vibe, and I think it's cool to see that and sort of play with that a little bit and see like why is he this way? Can he get out of it? I would assume that he'll get out of it. He's Nick Fury. But how do they get there? What do we learn about him? I'm excited for all of that personally.
Do you think some because I do think so, I'll say it that way, some of the reason that they are presenting him that way is to like put like the seeds of doubt into everyone's mind immediately, like he could be a Skrull, like this could be the Skrull too, even though like obviously Far From Home, the Fury we saw with, you know, Spider-Man and whatnot was a Skrull, and then we saw him on the ship that he's coming down from now, but he could still be a Skrull. I assume, I don't know, I guess that's the point. You don't know who they're going to really go for with these, but it's almost like, okay, I'm almost expecting everybody to be a Skrull. Maybe that's a me issue. Because like Ross's like reveal, I was like, okay. Because I just was like, this makes sense that early on they're going to make like a big reveal. And then it was, I guess. I mean, I like Ross. So yeah, I'm disappointed. He's cool.
Anybody could be a Skrull. I think that's the idea that we're going for here.
But do you think that that's why Fury is like
yes,
like okay,
yes, from a narrative standpoint, I do think that there's that double opportunity in the writers' heads to be like, we have a chance to explore Nick Fury in a way that we've never done before, and then also exactly what you said, people will be like, oh, it's Fury as we've never seen. Wait a second, and I do think that that's probably in there. Do I think Fury is a Skrull? No, I don't.
Yeah, I'm on that side too. We'll see. What was the other thing I was? Oh, I do like though. Maybe you're gonna get to this, but how talking about Fury and the different side, like how he's like let people down, let the Skrulls in this situation, and how he's like really caused a lot of like dissatisfaction among the people he promised to help and stuff. And I think that's interesting because I mean, it's again, he's been a side character, but he's always been the in charge, knows what he's doing, gets it done. And now it's like, oh, you fucked up, you know? So now we have a secret invasion. I do like that that's like, quote unquote, his fault right now. I think that that's a cool character kind of, not development, but like shit to put on him at this point. I think that's kind of fun.
Not skipping too fast past Ross, we know is a Skrull, or at least Ross in that scene, in that moment was a Skrull. How long do you think he was a Skrull?
No, I think that's what I think is fun. Like, are we ever gonna go back and be like, what happened to the real Ross? You know,
right,
like
because that was a big thing in the comic books that you referred to, is like, if Captain America walks out and he's a Skrull, it's like, oh, how long have we been dealing with the fate? And I feel like that's not really addressed in this episode. It might be later.
Yeah,
I don't know. But I'm curious, like, was the Ross we just saw in Wakanda Forever, was that a Skrull? Or no, you know?
that's an interesting question, because I mean, we got more of a in Wakanda Forever, like a connection with like Val, and then, like, the greater CIA, whatever the fuck they're doing, situation. And so I think, I mean, why not? Could he have been a Skrull there? But I think at the same time, everybody loves Martin Freeman, so it's like nobody wants that to be the case.
Right. My other thought is, if as implied by myself in conversation with Skrull Ross, if the idea that the Skrulls are the reason they're infiltrating and becoming these people is because they want to destabilize the world and have everyone kill each other.
Yeah.
Then Ross, specifically during the events of Black Panther Wakanda Forever, would he not have then actually been like siding with Val and trying to like insinuate more war as opposed to siding with Wakanda and trying to stop it?
No, that's a good point. Yeah. I mean, part of that also depends on like how much we think the people who wrote these or oversaw these different projects were like really thinking that through it all. But I do like that point. I mean, I agree. Like, it doesn't seem like he was doing anything to try and, you know, further this general Skrull agenda, destroying the world. And I would guess that that's kind of the conclusion, if we really get like a really concrete one, is he hasn't been a Skrull for that long, or that guy hasn't been Ross for very long in terms of what other people know. But I do think it would be cool. I don't think they're going to do it, but if they really sunk into the idea of a lot of these people have been Skrulls this whole time, since the 90s, right? 30 years. That's just an interesting kind of layer of like what's been happening in the MCU that I think is cool. I think there's too many people are going to ask a lot of questions about that. I don't think that's why they won't really harp on that. Like, Ross may have been a Skrull here, but it was only for like a week, you know, like something like that. So
Yeah.
I don't know. But I think it'd be cool if they could like really stretch that out, but it's very difficult to do in a Disney Plus series when you have so much else going on. And you'd have to like go back and be like, oh, well, they were doing this here because of this, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, those are my thoughts.
Yeah. So I think we've covered that treacherous Ross, but around the same time, we learn a little bit more about one of the good Skrulls out there, Talos. And we learn that Talos's wife has passed and that his daughter is not, they're not on good terms. Fathership is hard. He messed up. She's gone. The wife's dead. But he does have some nice, intimate moments with Nick Fury. What are your thoughts on the Talos-Fury relationship in this episode?
I mean, that's my first thought was like, whoa, like they're
they're homies.
And then it's like I get it's like more of the Skrull like greeting and stuff too, but it's like even like take that, like, okay, it's just doing the Skrull greeting. It's like that's still very not like the Nick Fury we know, and not in like a he's a Skrull way, but in a this is a different side of Nick Fury kind of way. But it's very like, for lack of a better word, like intimate and like friendly and like kind of loving and like all this stuff. And that was a weird kind of start Fury here compared to what we're used to. And I do think it sets the stage for like, okay, this isn't just like a job for him, you know, like it's personal, as we know. And yeah, they seem very close, which is interesting. They've just been hanging out more or less for 30 years until he dipped out to space.
As an agent, I can tell you that's guys being dudes, okay? Guys being dudes. Sometimes we touch foreheads.
Not dudes being guys, it's guys.
It's not it's guys being dudes, and sometimes we get a little touchy-feely, and it's good. It's good for the soul, okay?
Do what you need to do. I'm not against it, but it did stand out.
So it stood out. It was a memorable moment. People are talking about it, and I'll say that separately from that, to a point that you just made. I think this goes more into the idea that this is, again, like Nick Fury, the series. And because of that, we're getting to see moments that someone like Nick Fury has that normally he wouldn't let people see. So I do feel like that's part of it. Like it's more personal. We're seeing what he's like around people. Talos might be one of the only people in the universe that he considers like a friend. So we might not have seen that before. When he's in the Avengers, when he's dealing with Captain Marvel, he's always got like a guard up because he's on the job. But we get to see him with someone that he lets that guard down. And that it's like, is this old weak Fury, or is this just Fury when he's not on the case? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that. I think there's a lot of questions of like, what's he been doing in his free time? And I'm sure we will get some more insight into that as the series goes on, because it is Nick Fury series, Secret Invasion. But I mean, as you point out, like it did stand out. At the time we are recording this, are a lot of people talking about it? No. Will they be? Yes, I am very confident you're right.
I listen, yeah. I think a few people have already maybe intercepted my first batch of footage. And again, I'm good at this, but I'm still working out some kinks. And those people have talked about it, and I feel like it's going to be a thing.
Okay, that's
I
fair.
feel like people might draw things.
Yeah, I have been less connected with your trend, the with people talking about these things that I have been in the past, which is fun. But yeah, I have not seen people talking about it, but that makes a lot of sense. I fully am not surprised.
Okay, so what do you think about our supposed big bad for this secret invasion, Gravik?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do like the actor. I will say that. I think when he is like, I mean, in Skrull form is a little different, but I mean, he's mostly in his, although we had a cool sequence, to be fair, at the end where he kept switching between different people.
Mhm.
I think that's a separate thing we can talk about. But I do like the vibe. I think he doesn't feel very like big baddish for a lot of reasons. One, he's like younger, and he's not like this big scary dude, and he's not like sitting there in Skrull form all the time like this big scary green dude. But I think it's good for the show, but it's like I don't necessarily, I don't know, compared to a lot of other villains, he doesn't necessarily stand out yet, let's say. It's not like against it, but it's kind of like, what's, where's it gonna go? Because I think for me personally, with Secret Invasion, knowing that it's not like the comics, I understand that, but I want something more to like happen. And I get first episode, lots of things could happen, but like Marvel doesn't have the best track record with their series. I like some of them plenty well, but a lot of people hate a lot of them. And there's some like valid criticism of like nothing seems to really like happen, and like villains tend to be disappointing and the ends tend to be disappointing. And I'm afraid it's gonna do that again. And I think there is potential to like ramp it up and like kind of make it chaotic and like legitimately like thrilling and suspenseful. And I hope they tap into that. And I think that character could be that. But right now it feels a little more like Falcon and Winter Soldier kind of level with the villain, which isn't the best, but
right.
I think it could be better. I don't think it's
bad. We don't get a lot on him in episode 1. He's there. He's really more of a looming threat than he is actually like on the front lines being a villain. It's a lot more Fury focused. It's a lot more Talos focused. It's a lot more me focused. And we don't get a lot of Gravik, but I do think it's interesting. I was talking with somebody else who has seen this footage, again, working out the kinks here, but they had brought up the fact that for a show about aliens with space, they seem to go out of their way to not have space be a setting or not show space, which I feel like is intentional to maintain this like grounded feel that the Secret Invasion is having. And I think that a side effect of that is this cool idea that Gravik has created new Skrullos, like a new Skrull society on Earth. It's hidden. I was going to make fun of the name New Skrullos and how they just did New Asgard. And then I remembered that I live in New York, and I felt like I couldn't go all in on that anymore. So I get it. But anyway, I was wondering what you felt about New Skrullos and that, because I personally I thought it was interesting. I think this idea that I always want to say Gia when I read it, but it's Gaia, right? Yeah, Talos's daughter. That she's sort of torn between Talos and Gravik, and she wants to be with her dad and have all this stuff, but yeah, the ideals of New Skrullos this place that I've discovered in my hiding, but am not going to tell anyone about yet. I'm playing the long game. I like that she's torn between these worlds, and I like the concept that if you're a Skrull living in New Skrullos, you get to be a Skrull all the time if you don't want to be a soldier. But if you want to be a soldier, you have to be in disguise all the time, so you like maintain that. That's also in New Skrullos. We see that, we hear that, and then we see the process of stealing someone's thoughts and memories and ideas and stuff. And that is a thing that is touched upon in the Secret Invasion comics, where they say like the longer that you are this person, you kind of just become them, and you almost like forget that you are a Skrull, which isn't happening here, thankfully. But you know, I think it's an interesting idea.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of the order of what I'm going to say. In general, the concept of their, you know, kind of mini civilization they got going on, we didn't see too much of it. Like we didn't see like kind of the day-to-day just hanging out version of it.
You saw kids kicking a ball around.
Right.
Going in carts.
Like, I almost like don't have any thoughts on it because it's like, okay, they're there, you know.
Right.
I did think, I don't know if this is super interesting, but so when they did kind of show that one specific person like becoming the new guy and they took his memories, I did think about how in Captain Marvel, one of the ways they like distinguished like who was a Skrull and not was they only could like simulate the recent memories. And what recent means, I don't fully know, but they, in this show, they had that machine going on, and that was like, I guess, the cure-all of that. And like to be in Captain Marvel, we know they kind of hooked her up to that too, kind of early on in the movie. So I don't know. There is an interesting question for me as a viewer of like how, like, do they just fully know everything about the person and that's it now, you know, versus what we kind of knew about them before. And I don't know if that's just an easy way to make this series work as well as it does in that capacity or not, but I do think there's an interesting question at some point of, like in the comics, somebody, Reed Richards, eventually figures out a way to make a device to, you know, pinpoint who is who. And I think, what did I read? I think it was in Guardians of the Galaxy, like in the background, they were selling like a Skrull detector device like long ago.
Oh.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's going to come into play, but it is interesting that what I remembered from Captain Marvel was, okay, they couldn't simulate, you know, old time memories, and that's a big thing. And now it seems like they can, which I do think adds to the concept of how long have these people been Skrulls? Does it kind of matter at a certain point if they're just that it's very strange. Yeah, so that's what stood out to me, I guess, in that kind of sequence, more so that than the like actual town or whatever you want to call it.
I'd like to get my hands on one of those Skrull detectors you're talking about. That's in space?
Since I guess so. I don't.
It's
probably just more of a casual Easter egg at that point. If that was,
I probably should have figured that out before I faked my own death. It's hard to get to space from here.
I do think similar to that, like in the comics, you had people like Reed Richards, and then you had Tony Stark to some extent in that run of they were the smart dudes kind of figuring that out. We don't really have that now. So like no one's really figuring it out. And probably they will at some point, I would assume. But I do think that's interesting because we don't really have anybody like sitting down, like thinking, how are we going to actually figure out who is or who is not a Skrull at some point?
This guy right here. This guy right here. This is my whole thing. And it didn't work, and they've taken it from me. I had the board with the pins and everything. Anyway, sorry. I'm still a little upset that I got shot. It's a whole thing. But I will say that footage, there are two things that stood out to me. And neither of them matter, but I made notes. One of them is they have Skrull wine. I would like to try that. I would like to try Skrull wine. Oh God, that was just terrible. And oh, good Lord. And there's one guy Oh Lord. Okay, so when she's going in, she has a dramatic like she's walking and then she turns around. Victory. She says victory, like that's their goal, right? To go back and watch it, you'll know what I'm talking about. When she says that, uh there's the one whatever extra they hired, one of the two door guards just like has a really great visual facial reaction. And I want to give that guy his flowers, okay? Because I noticed it and I want him to know that someone noticed it because I noticed it. And she was like, victory. And he was like he had like a knowing, like he knew, he agreed, victory. Terrifying for the human race, but that guy was really into it. And I appreciated that very, very much. Another thing we kind of skipped past, and I want to hop back to real quick. We briefly brought up Sonya Falsworth. Another character who isn't in this episode a lot, but is in this episode, and presumably will be in more down the line. Sonya, based on my files, and feel free to add any information that I leave out, is based sort of loosely on a family in the comics, the books that the Skrulls are using to infiltrate. The Falsworth family, they have a lineage of being this like British vigilante called Union Jack. There have been both men and women in the comics. I don't believe Sonya specifically is one of them. I think that she's an original. I think she's original to my world. But she's certainly an original character with a familiar comic book last name. I guess the closest we're gonna get to a Union Jack. Although in Captain America: The First Avenger, one of the Howling Commandos is a Falsworth, and he has a Union Jack. Like his gear is shaped like the Union Jack. So she's probably a descendant of that Howling Commando, which is how her family is where they are in England or whatever. But I just wanted to bring it up that she is based on the comic book concept that I have read in my research on the Skrulls. I think it's very interesting. And Olivia Colman, as she's known wherever you are, is also clearly having a really good time with this role. She, like, just a giggling. A lot of giggling, I imagine, was going on. So, what are your thoughts on Sonya?
I mean, I love Olivia Colman. And I mean, obviously, she has a fucking Oscar. Like, she does not need to be here. You know, I mean, no one needs to, but like, and I do think it's fun how many, like Amelia Clark too, like just big people they got for this. And I feel like Amelia Clark so far, I'm like, are they using her much, you know, compared to what we're used to with her, like what we know she can do acting wise? Right. You know, maybe. But Coleman's character, Sonya, she's just a lot of personality, very quick. And I think she will continue to be that. I don't know how much she'll be like any kind of main character versus like a recurring kind of side-ish character that's sort of like in Nick Fury's way, but sometimes helpful. Like that's the vibe I'm gonna get based on this first episode. Like they're frenemies a little bit, because they're like old time friends, I guess. But she's like, you're old now, like you get out of my way. So she'll be fun. I don't fully know what her like overarching purpose is. Maybe she's also a Skrull.
Right.
Could be anything.
Anybody could be a Skrull.
She's fun, and it's like a cool actress to like have here and like really, like you point out, like have a lot of fun in it. So she's just like enjoyable to like be on screen and stuff. So I do really like that. But like overarching, I don't know. Truly don't know.
Yeah. And again, there's not much to go on based on the comics. So, and it's not like a Falsworth was a huge player in the Secret Invasion comics. So this is sort of an original character created for the show. So we're going to see where that goes. I also wanted to bring up, there's a lot of verbal references to, again, they're spinning this plot line out of Captain Marvel, but there's a lot of verbal references to Carol Danvers. Obviously she doesn't show up in this episode. Do you think that Carol Danvers is going to show up at all? in these 6 episodes?
And like in my head, I'm not expecting it at all. I
Okay,
have
neither am I.
Yeah, okay. I was gonna say I haven't been as like as I have been in the past, like connected to like what random people are saying, but I have never once expected it. So if that's somehow something that's leaked, I don't fucking know. But like
No,
yeah, I really don't anticipate that. No. And I think that's part of it. It's just like I don't anticipate any big
right.
cameos out of nowhere. I think Don Cheadle, Rhodey, is honestly the biggest like Avenger type we're gonna get, and he's
And
no secret.
yeah, and they can use him, one, because Armor Wars may never happen, and two, because like he's not in this show in this footage as War Machine. He's here as James Rhodes in his government role, and that's like the only reason that they include him and he fits is because he fits into that world powers and world leaders. We see him in this episode with President Dermot Mulroney, and so like who I think is probably Skrull, if we're being honest. And yeah, so he's there. I also don't think anyone else is going to show up. Not a lot of Rhodey in this episode. I know you said you were excited about him. Did you have any thoughts on his brief appearance?
Not in this episode. No, I mean he was mostly not even facing the camera. I think he was just kind of talking. But I will say, given what we know about, to the extent we know anything, Captain America 4 and Harrison Ford being president, I think your point of this president here, he's at least not gonna last long. And I think that's probably a good point to say he could be a Skrull. And I think in the comics there is like a page, if not multiple, where like all the world leaders are like talking on screen. It's like, oh, they're all Skrulls. And that's kind of cool. So I wonder if we're gonna get something like that, or if that's just like you pointed out, that's the bigger focus here. And so I think that's an easy target of, ooh, crazy Skrull reveal, president of the United States, you know? So I think that's probably likely.
I also wrote down a couple things that I kind of plugged together in the end thematically that I really enjoyed watching from my hidden bunker. It's the only thing I have to watch. So it better be at least a little entertaining. I had a stack of VHSs. One of them, the classic Tina Fey and Amy Poehler film Baby Mama. I had that. I had the original live action Scooby-Doo, and I left all of it behind. I got shot and I panicked, so I left and I didn't bring anything. So this is all I have. So I really hope that it's good, and it's fun to keep talking about. Now, I wrote down. Well, one, there's like I will not stop talking about it. I love theory dialogue in this show. These scenes, right? It's not a scene. It's a goddamn arms race, but that's fine. And he says at one point, sorry, don't have my glasses. Everything is priceless until it gets blown to bits in a hail of bullets. And like, I just hope he never stops talking like that. It's real fun. I wrote down that they do a lot of truth tests, as I said, in here. I think that it's especially in the scenes with Talos and Gaia that it feels like Talos is presumably telling Gaia the truth, but it's like even amongst the Skrulls, I think there's an interesting added appeal to that there's like a quote unquote good faction of Skrulls and a quote unquote bad, because even amongst Skrulls you still get that idea of who is siding with who and who is lying to who. Yes, Mary.
That made me think about, I hadn't thought about it much while watching, but once you said that, it seems really obvious. But like the fact that Talos was telling Gaia about her mom dying, his wife dying at the hands of the bad Skrulls, like you said, but obviously we have not seen any kind of flashback. We don't have any other information, and that made me realize, okay, maybe that's another twist that's coming on. That's
right. Well, and that's why I keep saying, like, in a show like this and in the real world, like good and bad, like it's all relative. So, for easy terms, it's good Skrulls, bad Skrulls, but I don't like Talos could flip, Gaia could flip. Like we don't know. In this episode, they make it seem like Gaia maybe flipped. You know, like who's to say? We're getting into like the end of the episode conversation here, which we probably should talk about sooner rather than later. So maybe we can get into that. I wrote down before I knew you brought up Gravik doing that cool like he's one person, then he's another person like throughout the ending sequence there. Creepy child quotes The Shining, and then turns to old guy from Russian bar because a lot of this show takes place in Moscow. It's where that is where I died, right? I don't know, it's a blur. Anyway, yeah, so let's talk about this ending. And the fact that Fury does screw up. He's not on his A game, and it leads to some bad things. Granted, I know Skrulls aren't easy to deal with, but I know firsthand. But he's Nick Fury, like this guy. He's supposed to be the best at everything, and he's not. He really, like, do we think Fury still has that dog in him, or no? And how do you feel about this ending with Gravik and Maria Hill getting shot and then not turning into a Skrull? So presumably dead, kaput, after all this time.
Yeah, I do like, I mean, this sounds morbid, but like the bombs going off and killing, I don't know, hundreds, thousands of people. Because that's like stakes, and I think sometimes, especially in Marvel, like you see a lot of destruction. It's like, oh, well, no one really died, And I think kind of making it like, oh, like this is serious, I did like that. I liked it, felt a bit more impactful than just like half a bomb going off somewhere and like nobody. I sound like about damn black people seemingly
the end
die.
of the first episode, they're like setting off bombs and killing
Yeah,
Maria Hill.
I did like the intensity of that. I guess I'll say that because it made it feel more like this has consequences. And I know that's a big thing with, I mean, all movies, but especially like franchises and stuff. But yeah, with Maria Hill, I mean, she's a classic because she was in Avengers to me. Like, so she's always been this like classic character that hasn't really shown up that much more since like Winter Soldier. She was there. She had her cameos in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is, something. So I kind of wish we got more time with her before they killed her. I don't mind that they killed her, to be honest, because again, she's not been around that much and she started back in 2012. It's one of those things, but it's like it didn't build up enough for me to like care again as much as like I would have honestly back in 2012 or 2014. And so I did feel like that was a little too quick. I get it because it ended the episode on like there are stakes, there's bombs. One of your classic characters is now dead. I get that. And I do think it introduced the concept of, I mean, it wasn't really Nick Fury, but like people dying and people thinking they're Skrulls, and then you go, oh, they're not. I like that too. But I do feel like with her specifically, I would have liked that to have been maybe later.
She did feel like sort of a narrative sacrificial lamb, where like I think a lot of people who knew that this footage was going to be out there, somehow, I don't know how leaked, but whatever. I think that they all expected her to have a bigger role and to like quote unquote finally get to know more about Maria in the same way that we are getting to know more about Nick. And then obviously rug out from under. It's not like some people might say it's slow. They took a few big swings for our first episode. I mean, starting with Ross as a Skrull, I wish they had talked about that more, but to open with that, I thought was like kind of, it shocked me. I didn't expect them to get to that so fast. And then ending like this was big. So it surprised me. It certainly made me on the edge of my seat to be like, okay, where do they go from here? I think it's a good it's a good like first episode cliffhanger ending. It's a good commentary because one of the scenes that Maria does get, one of the moments that Maria does get, is she has a conversation where for the first time ever, she tells Nick, I don't think you got it. And I think that you shouldn't be here because someone's gonna get hurt. And then obviously it ended up being her. And I think her death does two things narratively. One, it proves that, but two, it also forces Nick to be like, okay, if Maria was the one who like would have done this, if you had never come back, now it's gotta be you. Like, if you don't have it in you anymore, you have to find it because it's all on you now, even though you just screwed up. I feel like it kind of puts Nick in that corner where he's like, the worst has happened, so now I gotta dig back.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Coulson, also in 2012.
Yeah.
I mean, different, but sort of like putting the guilt on the hero of, you fucked up, that's why they're dead. We love this guy or this lady. Now you gotta go avenge him. It kind of feels like that a little bit. And again, that's not bad necessarily. But like I said, I think with her, they had a character that people have known to some extent for a long time, and I think they could have developed her more, or at least within the show developed her a lot more in terms of like when she did die, if that was something you know to do, people were like, because at the end of the first episode, it's like, oh, it's like sad, but it's like, oh, so she's done, like
no,
that was
she got the short end of the stick for sure. And I'm saying that, you know what I'm saying? Like, I was in one scene in anything ever. And I think that she got the short end of the stick. So Maria was a good soldier. Still not, I don't know who she worked for either. I don't know who anyone works for in this show.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Nick Fury's on Saber, whatever. Is Saber its own thing now? Could he be working for? That's fine-ish. But I assume she was CIA now, because like Ross was CIA, but then he wasn't after Wakanda Forever, presumably.
I like the idea that Fury goes to like government meetings and everyone's got divisions and they've all got people they work for. And with Fury, they're like, Fury, you just be you. I don't know what you're doing, but you're figuring stuff out that we're not figuring out. So like, keep on trucking, soldier. And he just like does his thing.
Because it doesn't seem like he actually works for anybody.
It feels like he's hired. Does he even get paid? Like, what's going on?
No. But then it's like,
I didn't get paid. Did you see where I lived?
But true, like who do you work for?
I don't know.
I'm saying, like, I don't know why.
I don't even know my first name.
I understand. But that's kind of my point. It's like, I don't know why they didn't take the 10 seconds or so that it would take to like clarify, oh, the CIA is investigating this, or oh, this other organization we have now investigating it. And that's what I thought that was weird. I noticed that, and I asked someone about it, like, oh, well, I think it's this, and they just said Saber. And it was JJ. He works for your site. But I was like, I don't think that's just the full answer.
Well, and it's not, because they don't even specify. I'm a government agent, Agent Prescod, and I don't know if Saber is part of Sword or if it's a different thing.
Thank you, because I said Sword, and Sword's not a thing yet. I'm like, is it not?
Sword is a thing. We've seen it already.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. It's one of those things that isn't that important, but it does raise questions. Who am I? I don't know. Am I a Skrull?
This series is all a dream. That's how it's
I don't know what's going on. Well, we've got 10 minutes to wrap this up. So I'm going to say, I think we've covered this series of events pretty well. And we'll be back next week to cover the next week's worth of content, of footage that I am able to obtain from this room somehow. Right? We're gonna do that. Now you're in on this, Mary. You're an agent for where I work. You're a part of it now. Okay?
Okay.
You're in on it. So you can't go anywhere. But I think that I like this show. I think this was a pretty good start. Some things maybe I would have done differently, but I'm more excited about the potential of this show than I have the past couple potentially Marvel shows or Marvel things. I don't know. I'm excited. I'm more excited than I thought that I would be, I guess. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I like that Fury is suffering. I like we got Old Man Fury, and he's suffering from what did I write in my notes? PBSD, post-blip stress disorder. He missed 5 years. This is a guy who's used to knowing everything, being 3 steps ahead, and now 5 years of history have passed, and he doesn't know what happened, and he wasn't there. And I think it threw him off a little bit. So hopefully he gets back in. Hopefully we find out more about what's going on with him. And I'm excited. Any closing parting thoughts on your end, Agent Mary?
To that point, I do like how they kind of, am I echoing? Connected the blip back, because I mean that's another MCU thing, is like they did that for the premise of Endgame, and they're like, oh, what do we do now? And so I like it when they like bring it back, because like that would be a big ass life event if that happened to you. And so I think that's like a great reason for him to just be like off now. You know, I think that's like a good way that they did that.
It impacts your mental health. Did I get blipped? I don't know. You won't know. I won't know. What my life is a mystery.
Everyone just went. I will say I agree with the potential. I do think it has the potential to be really good. I don't know if they will do it. And part of that is just, I guess, bias based on some of their other series of where it's like, you know, they kind of like to the finish line. But I hope they like sprint to the finish line, because I do think the sort of thriller vibe, and it is a lot less action that we're used to, and I think that's what's part of why a lot of people think, look at me, like it's slower for that reason. But that's not because, to your point, they're not doing anything. They are killing or scrolling or whatever, a lot of the bigger characters we know pretty quick. So I hope they really just amp up the vibe of like, can you get the audience to actually sit there and go, oh god, who's Skrull, you know? I think that's the key, and if they can do that, I think it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Amazing. Well, Mary, thank you for taking the time to break down. You're helping me save the world. And everyone who's watching this, we're heroes. So I want you all to understand that and maybe praise us a little bit. You can do that by watching this video and sharing this video with people. I hate saying things like this as an agent in the field. But, you know, do that. And if you like this, let us know. And hopefully you'll never see it, because this is top secret and we're talking about an invasion that's secret. But if you do, let us know if we're likable. Thank you very much.
No. Don't let us know if we're not. You know, no one needs to know. I'm here for
We assume we're not, so you don't have to tell us. But if you think that we are, it never hurts to say nice things. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Agent Prescod, out.
Mary out.
Thank you, Agent Mary.